My mom taught me to sell at a spaza shop. She ran a hair salon. I pretty much learned entrepreneurship from my moms.
Umntu ngumntu ngabantu. That on your own, you can't really do it. You need the support of those around you.
You will have a network of people, a network of communities, and a society that will make sure that you count.
Hi there, it's time for another session of Saita Straight Talk. Saita Straight Talk is a series of panel discussions that is brought to you by Saita, the South African Informal Traders Alliance. And here in this panel discussion series, we talk about all things relevant to the informal sector, whether it's business or whether it is social issues or whether it's just something that we need to celebrate. We often talk about the subjects that few of us would just discuss openly anywhere, because this is what Saita Straight Talk is all about. My name is Louise Silva, and it's my pleasure to be your host. This evening, we started, in fact, on Tuesday, we started preparing for what we would be expecting in the budget speech. This happened yesterday, and tonight it is my privilege to have as my panelist this evening, Carl Lotter, and we're going to dissect some of it and see just what is happening in the economic climate for small, medium, micro, and informal traders. Carl, good evening and welcome to Saita Straight Talk. Please just give us a brief introduction of yourself.
Good evening, Louise. I'm very honored to be able to meet with you through this medium. And it's a very important time to be talking about what the world called MSME. In that, they talk micro, small, medium enterprises. And if you heard the finance minister yesterday, he never spoke about small business. He never spoke about informal traders. He never spoke about micro. He just spoke about small business. And it seems that in government, when they talk small business, they mean micro, small, medium enterprises. So in the speech yesterday, we must read, I believe, that we're talking about MSME, micro, small. Say a few words and discuss it with you. I am extraordinarily happy that I've got in front of me your byline, nothing about us without us. That's an important, from the time I met Rashida about 10 years ago, I discovered that byline. I believe it was used before, but it was fresh there and it's fresh now. When our engagement with government, when I talk about the budget, when we talk to the department, nothing will work unless it is done with us. We say so about women business. We say so about youth. We say so about any marginalized party. And we say that to big business and to government. We want to work with you. We want to see it happen. We want informal traders to grow. As they grow, we want to be able to discuss it with you. But we don't like when you neglect us, when you don't talk to us, and when you make rules without our participation. And so it's a very important area for informal traders. Hygiene, safety comes to mind. You have many more.
Carl,
And these
Carl,
are the things we started to think.
I just want to interject quickly. And for the sake of our audience, let's just take a step back. And will you just give us give me a brief introduction about who Carl Lotter is and why are you so passionate about this, and what organizations are you currently involved with?
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I should have started there. My name is Carl John Lotter, and I'm currently chairman of SASMIA. The A stands for associations, which is the latest statement. But we began this discussion 12 years ago when the then president, and before him, Thabo Mbeki, said, we need the private sector to work with us. And I said to myself, well, where is that going to be? And for me, it was small business. And the reason why it was small business for me is that I'm a former banker. I knew exactly what happened inside one of our major banks when they look at small business, how it's dissed out, how it's ignored, how barriers are set for it. So I knew NB, and before that Barclays, how big banks deal with it. Secondly, I have had a few years, 6 years, diplomatic experience in trade in Australia and America. And I learned very quickly there how they dealt with small business and how important it was for them. And then, if anybody's interested in economics, particularly economic history, you cannot come away from studying economic history without recognizing that all the things we call today big business, supply chains, all this big talk began as small business. And America is big because of small business. Europe is big because of small business. Asia is a tiger because of small business. And we seem to be lagging behind. It's something we are missing out on. And when my group started exploring this, we came to the conclusion that the reason why small businesses are not as good in South Africa, failure rate high, etc., you know all the problems, was that we're not at the main table. The president calls a summit. Who goes there? Business goes there, labor goes there, and then they say Busa and Saki represents small business, or they have NAFCON. And when you look at the people that they have there who say belong, they're all corporate types. They're all people who cut their teeth in the corporate world. None of them ever worked either as a banker for small businesses, as I did for over 30 years. And none of them have ever been run a business of their own. And they can get away with it at these tables, and nothing happens as a result of the summit. We've seen this before. For instance, if you have a summit on investment, if they're going to invest in South Africa and they invest in every big firm, nothing will happen. Those firms will need small businesses to produce things, to give them the opportunity, to give them the space. Small business will deliver the small things. That's how production began in America. In fact, that's how 40,000 years ago man developing the small parts, the hammers, the saws, the screwdrivers, the propellers. All along history, you will see that it was small businesses developing these, and that was absorbed in a production line into big business, and that's how you got Boeing, and that's how you got the big chain stores, and in fact, that's how America built the railway. The same way as the British built their railway, the same way as
Carl,
India, when it was still a colony, built their railway. So
yeah.
we really, really must understand that the voice of small business needs to be heard. Saita is an important part of that voice. It's in fact in Saita's case, specifically, it's got to be heard in the municipality, it's got to be heard in the metros, it's got to be heard at the provincial level, and it's got to be heard at the national level. There's all those grades where Saita has to be heard. And the reason why I just wrote a blog today, people say, why do you need government? Well, Saita needs government because who's going to make the rules about safety? Who's going to make the rules about health and water available to the informal sector? Who's going to talk about those things and make the rules? Government, municipally, they make the rules, but they must not do it without the voice of Saita. Nothing about us without us. And that is the same for the organization that I run. Nothing about us without us. And so we would really like to take Saita along with us, and we hope that Saita would like to take us along with it. One of our major byline for this work is collaboration. And collaboration means coming together and working together for something new, something that does not yet exist, but which we want. Is that enough?
Carl, yeah. I want to. We know that
Yes?
up until now, there's been a lack of political will to have all the role players around the table. In your introduction, you referred to the budget speech, and you did say that small businesses or micro businesses and informal traders weren't mentioned by name. We are making an inference that the minister had included the huge sector in what he was referring to. Is that wishful thinking, or do you think that we're now reaching that tipping point where government and business is realizing that this engine that's going to assist in creating and getting people employed is really, really relevant to the success of the South African economy?
Yes, the time has come for it. But you speak about political will. That's the one thing. The other thing we must talk about is civil servants who decide for small businesses, but they earn a salary. But small business people don't earn a salary unless they can make money. So, how is this imbalance of power working? We must have that at the back of our mind. In the Western Cape, I do know that the Premier Alan Winde is very open to Saita. And I do know that the city is very open to Saita. But remember that the whole economic development trajectory from the country begins with national policy. And the problem that we have there is that the current Department of Small Business refuses to open the doors for communication. In fact, the minister has blocked me off her Facebook page the other day. And I just had a call today. I seem to have a call every day with somebody saying they can't get through the department. The emails are bouncing. They can't get the minister's email address. But it's the first time in 24 years of democracy that I've heard this. That you can't. When we came in 24 years ago, 94, we came in for accessible government. We must be able to talk at every level at government. And why are they blocking? I'm talking about government. Why? Do you hear me?
No, I've lost you a little bit. Your screen is frozen on my side. I think there's a there you're back. I can see you back now. Let's go back to the budget speech. The rumblings are that generally people
Yes.
are very satisfied with what the minister presented yesterday. If I'm going to be the one that says I'm not too convinced. It looks to me that the budget works for people that are in formal employment. There seems to be a lot of relief there. But what is there in terms of what do you see in the budget that's really exciting for informal traders, micro businesses, and small businesses?
Well, I think it's the better budget that we've had for a long time. And Minister Godwana doesn't speak highfalutin, highbrow. Minister Godwana speaks what is in your pocket. What is going to be in your pocket if we do this? And for small business, he spoke about the two big projects that are coming through. You will remember mentioned in it. And then he also spoke about tax. And the one big project is very clearly written about, and he wants small business to participate in it. He said you must come and take up the opportunity. Well, that's fine, but where is our link with that opportunity? Where is our link with Treasury? Who's going to talk to us? Who are you going to recognize? Are you going to recognize organizations like NAFCOC? Have we heard of NAFCOC for a long time? I've heard of NAFCOC for a long time. I now have a member of NAFCOC on my council, Vusi Bokwana.
And there the signal goes again. Carl?
She's very keen on the West.
Carl, won't you just check for me?
But who else
won't
in the country?
Won't you?
Who else is
Carl, I'm sorry to interrupt you because I really want to hear what you've got to say there. But do you just want to check on your device and see whether your signal is at full strength? Because we are struggling to hear you.
Oh dear. Where do I look for the signal?
At the bottom of your look at the bottom of your screen on the right hand side. There should be
Yeah.
There should be a little dot with signal waves going out. Does it look as if though it's full strength?
On my
Okay, you seem to be back now. Let's use the opportunity for you to continue what you were saying about NAFCOC and somebody that's on your board right now.
Yeah, well, NAFCOC is an important player because NAFCOC has been around for small business for many decades prior to 94. And
Yes.
so NAFCOC is a very important player, but it has lost its way. And if you look at the NAFCOC financials, you will see that they spend most of their time fighting court battles and not helping SME. They're very internally focused, and the big Gallagher estate is their only asset, and they're trying to sell it and divide it amongst each other, and they're fighting about it, and they're fighting about who should be chairman and who's not. So I don't think, as much as they are, I mean, one of the founders of NAFCOC is a very noble man, was our ambassador until recently. He's now 95 years old. That noble leadership that we had, like with Mandela, it seems to be drifting away. And we have a NAFCOC now where they're not even understanding what it means, nothing about us without us. They're just internally looking at themselves and keeping their pieces together. But there's BUSA, Business Unity South Africa, was especially helped to uplift. But for Saita to go to BUSA or for SASMET to go to BUSA, it's about 40,000 Rand to get a membership so that we can be seated at NEDLAC. You see, we ought to all be seated at NEDLAC because that's where government, labor, and business get together, and civil society. But we're not there. And one of the reasons we are not there is because we are so divided amongst us as small business. Now, I'm not saying that out of my thumb. If you looked at the NDP, the National Development Plan, and you looked at their diagnosis, it speaks of the small business to be broken up and fragmented, and the real reason. So, me coming on your program, and I hope that you will come on my program sometime, we must start collaborating. We must start talking with one voice for small business, big and small, informal and formal. And we must be aware that even if you're small or micro or informal, there is among that group, not 100%, but at least some who are going to grow and want to emerge. I mean, as a banker, I can tell you, a man then in my day buys one truck. Soon his businesses grow, he wants to buy 2 trucks. Soon as that grows, he wants to buy 3 trucks. And so there's a natural thing when good business grow, and you can apply it to micro and you can apply it to very small. So we must have the environment right, and that's what when I hope you heard when the minister spoke about pensions. He said, "I can't give you the money of your pension. It must go to your trustees, and your trustees must divvy up the money. What I can do, he said to them, is I can produce the laws that enable your trustees to do that. And that's what he's going to do under the Insurance Act. And I think about the things he's going to do for small business, the tax. He's going to reduce that tax all round for business, but there's special things for small business. This will create more cash in the pocket of a small business. He's going to make entry to finance by using two products in his speech. You will remember it was Treasury at the moment. How is the next question is okay, it's with Treasury, but when are you going to talk to Saita to help us deliver it to the micro? When are you going to talk to Saita? That's a question I want to be asking. I don't expect a small business, but now we've got a department of small business. Every annual budget is 1.6 billion, and they're doing nothing. They're not answering phones. They're not answering emails. The minister blocks you out as soon as you become too loud, and she doesn't like what you're saying. And so at the moment, we all stand, MSME, we all stand together because we have no link into the big picture of government, because our Department of Small Business is hopeless out of touch.
But Carl, doesn't that also refer back to exactly what the president said in the SONA speech when he spoke about the removal of red tape? Because we know that a lot of the small businesses and especially our micro and informal traders are really pulling on the short end of the stick because of red tape and because of requirements in order to access government funding. If I'm a small little trader on the corner here, I don't have bank account because really, if I must pay those banking charges, already that eats into my profit. But in order for me to access any funding from government, I have got to go through a list of ticks and checks and balances before I can even apply. That doesn't even mean that I'm going to be successful in getting the money. So what is the remedy?
You're very correct in your analysis. Well, one of the big things in the SONA speech is the president has appointed Mr. Sipho Nkosi, who was a senior executive at Sasol and Exaro, and he is going to work with the red tape issue. Now, let us look very carefully at the red tape issue, because the danger with what the minister spoke about is that when it gets to us, it's so covered in red tape that we hardly get a chance to access the benefit. It's rules this way and that way. And that's the danger of a new product that the minister is speaking about, given to the Department of Small Business. They've got to turn the implementation process. And when they turn the implementation process, they create a lot of red tape. This is the reason why the president's first assistance to small business during COVID failed. And they said, Louise, they said there was no uptake by small business. The truth of the matter is, and was just spoken about today on the financial radio, that the truth about it is there's no uptake because it's so difficult to take up in the first place. I mean, from the business of going into any of those CEDA offices, the frontline staff are so unhelpful that you're just amazed that you want to be there. So you from the very entry of the door, you have a lot of unhelpful government staff, and so you can't get further. You can never get further. Then you find, just as you said now, then you find all these things that you must have. Totally expensive, very, very expensive, and your cash flows are really very tight. Now, where do you get money to do that? We've got to get rid of some of those steps. Secondly, when you get to the banks and for the money, the people in the bank, and I can tell you this from experience, both after my banking career and now, and in my banking career now, is they think they are given a set of rules and they are measured by that set of rules, and their bonuses and increase comes by that set of rules. So they're not going to give a micro business any discretion. In my day, we could still give discretion. Now
Yeah.
it is a total tick box. And the people who designed those rules all come from the corporate world. They've been prepared. And their education, when they did accounting and they did those things at school, was all modeled on big business. And so
Yes.
they come into the bank. And I saw this already in 94. They come into the bank and they start applying corporate rules. It's very much like South Africa wants to do things that the Western world does, and it's not ready for it yet. So there is the big deal link. And I'm glad you brought up red tape. Red tape is one of the things we can do now by Henrik Kruger in Parliament on red tape. And you know what? The ANC threw it out because Hendrik was a DA. Threw it out because they never brought the bill. The department never brought the bill. And that is another reason why small business development must stand independent of any political party. It must be powerfully on its own about small business. So we could have been down the track with Hendrik's bill. If we didn't like it, we could have changed it. We supported the bill. It's got some very good elements in it. But the ANC in that year, two years ago, wouldn't let it go through. Now we can't allow that. If the bill comes, it must have our support in, and if anybody, any party or anything denies it, they're denying it to small business. They're not denying it to the party. So that's why important thing is, Rashida and I are very clear on this. Your membership, the voice of your membership, has to find an official standing and power. It has to become a powerful voice that cannot be ignored. That you won't just accept small little gifts from the city or for the province, or as in the other provinces they accept from the ANC small little gifts in these townships to make them happy. No, when you're dealing with Saita, you're dealing with over 200,000. It's a powerful lobby, and you've got to listen to them. Now, how do you get them to listen? You've got to be at the table. You've got to be at the table, and the table that the Constitution gives us is NEDLAC. And why are they making the cost to be seated at NEDLAC so high that it excludes small business? So no matter what we do, and we've got to do a lot, that's training, there's promoting of small business. These things have got to go on, but they need momentum. But the sad thing is, they are successful only in a limited degree. For the country to grow, we need it to be vastly different. So, and bigger. And how do we get that message across if we're not at the table?
But Carl, there's a different view that we also need to consider, and that is the accessibility that our informal traders and our micro enterprises has into corporate business in terms of that procurement function. I mean, the reality is that at the moment, the triple BEE codes are written to exclude all of that market. So if you remove the red tape and I have access to funding and I can put the resources into my business, but I cannot get anybody to use me so that I can turn the business, then that also becomes quite meaningless, isn't it?
Yeah. A small business owner went into Woolworths and he had to be interviewed. He went through different, and a lady came out looking very executive. She's a BA social worker, not social worker, she's BA sociology and that sort of thing. And she interviewed him, and there were 6 others. And then she went into her bosses and said, I've got these 7 people all telling me why we should have, but I can't make a choice. And she can't make a choice because she's not trained to make a choice. On the other side, we had a candle maker who went into Checkers ShopRite. he met a 40-year-old woman without any degrees, barely a matric. She was their buyer. And she looked at him and she said, "Your candles is not good enough for us. But come with me and I will show you what we've got in our storehouse. And you go and see if you can make a better candle than what we've got on our shelves." And the man went away and he came back with a better candle. And ShopRite checkers are to this day buying his candles. Now, can you see the difference? Can you see the difference of approach? Then the second point is all these big companies have to give 3% of their profits to ESD.
Yes.
ESD should be funding Saita. But ESD is used by the big companies as a marketing tool to buy customers. I know of one case on the West Coast where ESD was given to a group of old ladies in an old age home to knit socks for the nursery. Now that's good, but that's CSI. That's what they must do as a good citizen.
Yeah.
Requires you to be, just as you said here, with us in the process. You got to, if Saita's got to think, your partner ought to be big business with you, without dictating, but to help you to deliver on your mandate. And so ESD, I believe ESD, it's 40 billion rand. It should be, if you go to you study the stock exchange and you calculate what all these big businesses make, it's about 35 to 40 million that should be in the ESD fund. Where is it? Where has it been? And the big thing is our BEE strategy is totally out of step. In fact, they bought out. The BE strategy, just you rightly pointed out, is not doing the work we want them to do, the commission.
Yeah, yeah. So our time is running out, Carl, and I have to ask you in closing. So, if you're a small and or a micro enterprise, and you're sitting and you really don't understand or see the benefit of yesterday's budget speech, what would your closing thoughts be, or your recommendations for somebody like that? What are the avenues that we can actively pursue? What are the questions that we should be asking, and to whom?
Well, the ecosystem for small business, and you did it in your intro, the people around you form an ecosystem. One of the strengths of that is micro and small businesses must belong to Saita. Important part that you can never change this on your own. Only together as you are in Saita can you begin to knock on the door of government and the knock on the door because you have a strong voice and you got to do that. And that is why we started SASMIA, whoever, is to come on a common platform to say, we want government to do motion bill through the standing committees at Parliament. We're gonna want to be on the main table. We're going to be arguing very strongly that the banks and some other mechanism be developed, and there are others. In Kenya, we have them. In Africa, in India, in Asia, where the small business the micro business doesn't have these difficulties. In in Brazil, we've got a very good organization called Cibraia, and Cibraia is so good that they're going to every village. And if you're turned down and you're a member and you're turned down by a bank, Sabra takes that right to the top and to know why you turned down. And if you met all the
That's
conditions and you shut down, that bank gets exposed for turning away small business. Yeah? We have our big talk, but they don't. When a small business phones, he's got to talk to the audience. What does the gentleman know about that big business? So we got to get together. We got to collaborate. We got to work together about something new, and it was in our original white paper with 94. In 94, they speak about the National Small Business Support System. And when that happens, let's take note. Secondly, big business must realize without small business, they've got no market. Why are we talking about no growth? We're talking no growth because growth is stopped by the big business. That's why we've got no new customers, no new
Yes.
ideas, no new research and development. Because big business don't want to take the risk to grow the market. And when they don't do this, and government is sitting tight, right? High failure rate in the first 3 months. And that is the reason why we have, in the case of Saita, that your pavement economy, how that pavement economy is so dehumanized by lack of water, lack of hygiene, lack of security, lack of access to the people who make it happen. That's where we got to. I've heard Rashida speak very passionately and heartily about it on many platforms, many platforms. But how can we get her to be heard more profoundly? I support everything she says. But how can we get her to be heard at the highest level? Why doesn't
With
NAFCOC
with programs such as Saita StraightTalk, we've definitely been making some huge inroads in making sure that the people that won't necessarily give us an audience around the table is beginning to get that message that there is a Saita that needs to be invited to the table.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But how do we do it? How do we do it? They can smile nicely to Rashida, and they can smile nicely to me, and they can give us a cup of tea, and they go back to the offices, and the person who makes the rules don't. The other day we had somebody from small business on our panel. About 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, he was sent by the DG to participate in our webinar. 2 or 3 weeks later, I phoned him up and said, have you done your report to the DG on your participation in the SASMIA webinar? He said, no, I didn't know I had to do that. I didn't do anything. They just asked me to deputize. I said, but surely you should be reporting about your meeting with us. Now, how? And nobody expected him to report. He came out to be nice to Carl and to tell Carl to shut up. That's what he came out to do. He wasn't asked to bring back a report for further engagement. And so that's exactly how it happens in most of our meetings all around. And Louise tension of our constitution. It's not how our constitution speaks. And when the president spoke in SONA, he spoke about the contract. You can't have a social contract, Mr. President, if your officials are not listening to us. You can't have a social contract when you're doing things without talking to us. So the president has to also begin to look at these people, and I think he's aware of it. He's appointed Mr. Sipho Nkosi. Why is he appointed Mr. Sipho Nkosi? Shouldn't the department be handling small business? No, the department's not handling small business, and the commander-in-chief is very unhappy. And so what does he do? He goes to get Mr. Sipho Nkosi and brings him in and said, Sipho, please see if we can get this going. Now we're going to wait to see. I've written to Mr. Sipho. Guess what he told me? Very kind and very polite, but he said, Carl, please give me some time. I'm trying to get an interview with the minister to work out my terms of reference. Now, we need the president to say to the minister, get to that meeting and work out its reference. You see the problem that we're having? That the minister can just ignore Mr. Sipho, keep him waiting, keep him off, And yet he's appointed by the president to sort out this. So I hope I've shared with you some of my deepest feelings and passions. I want
have.
Saita to advance. Saita is an important constituency we cannot overlook. Our small and micro business do not have the time or the money to spend on what you and I are talking about. We've got to do it for them. We've got to be the intermediaries that do it. I don't care a hoot what they say about lobbyists. We've got to lobby hard on their behalf. And we've got to find some way. And I believe our lobbying ought to be supported by ASD funds. ASD funds should, because eventually when we get this through, who's going to benefit? Big business. Small business is going to benefit, yes. But also big business is going to have more customers. So be strong. I'm supporting Saita. I'm supporting Rashida. I'm supporting you, Louise. And I look forward to your support to what we do too. Thank you.
As you say, Carl, thank you for your input. And I think the one thing that comes out of today, and that's surely something that COVID-19 has accelerated and made more important, and that is the importance of collaboration, and that mutual success is determined by the level to which we take hands and make sure something new happens that's to the benefit of all of us.
Yeah. Let me say on collaboration. Let me say on.
Oh, your line's buffering again.
And collaboration.
Carl, I'm not hearing you.
On collaboration, you know what the different organizations here, one's part of Cypher's input, and so on. Yeah. So
I'm
thank
really
you very
sorry that I
much.
can't hear you, but the signal is letting us both down this evening. Again, thank you so much, Carlotta from Sasmia, our guest this evening. Make sure that you share this video. Make sure you follow us on Facebook. Saita Media is the Facebook name. We've also got a YouTube channel called Saita Media. You see the scroller on the bottom of the screen saying you can download the Saita app. It really is a piece of technology worth having on your phone. Until next time, from me, Louise, and the Saita StraightTalk team, good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.